Hello everyone and welcome to the Chrissy B Show, the UK's only TV programme dedicated to mental health and well-being topics. Every year millions of people hear the news from their doctor about a fatal or potentially fatal disease they have. No one's prepared for such news, and it's not just the individuals that are affected but also their loved ones. But how can you deal with all the negative emotions that come when you or a loved one are facing death? Yes, it's a difficult subject to discuss and many people don't want to hear anything about dying, but it's something that is inevitable for all of us and needs to be talked about. So let me tell you about what's coming up on today's show. First of all, we're going to be revisiting a story of a lady who lost her husband just a week after they got married. We'll also be revisiting an interview with Shelley Gilbert from an organisation called Grief Encounter that helps children cope with bereavement. And throughout the show, we'll be watching the amazing story of Kate Granger, who received a terminal cancer diagnosis. And later, I'll be speaking about my own phobia of death that I had in the past that brought on severe panic attacks. And I'll also be sharing the top regrets of the dying in order to inspire those of us who are still here to make the most of our lives. But first, I'm going to speak to Dying Matters Head of Policy and External Affairs, Simon Chapman. Welcome to the show, Simon.
Hello, Chrissy. It's good to be here. Thank you for asking me.
That's brilliant. So, obviously, as I said in the intro, dying is a very taboo subject. People don't like to speak about it. But your organisation is actually called Dying Matters, which, you really delve into this subject. Can you tell us how the charity came about and what you do?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. We picked the name Dying Matters because it really does. And as you said in your introduction, this is inevitable. It's going to come to all of us one day. But all of us, actually, as part of living, are going to experience bereavement. Most of us are going to experience the loss of somebody close to us. And it's a really important part of life. And if we don't talk about it, and we don't plan ahead for it, if we don't think about what we want for ourselves, if we don't talk with people that we know who we're close to who are dying about what they want for themselves, then a lot of the things that we're most frightened about happening, the things that go wrong, the things that are difficult, are going to happen because we haven't been open about it and be able to have the really important big conversations that we need to.
And what are the benefits of actually speaking about what you want for when you do pass? Oh,
all sorts of things. So let's take a really simple example. Let's just take funeral planning, for example. So if you haven't told your family whether you want to be buried or cremated, and then when you die, that's just one decision that they have to make, and they may have different feelings about that. They're thinking about the funeral itself, what sort of music you want or what sort of service you want, particularly when many of us have got quite complicated family relationships with different sets of children with different partners. When you've died, if you haven't got it written down, then the potential for a family bust up at a time of real emotion and grief, it's just going to make it all worse for them. It is there. So talking about it, writing down what you want, makes it much easier for everybody.
Yeah, and as you do say, it does take the pressure off the family, but it's like sometimes people are like, oh God, I don't want to even think about me dying. And it's like some people even got the idea that, I don't think they really kind of realise that one day it's going to happen. It's just so pushed so far away from their thoughts that they just don't even want to talk about funerals or anything. It's quite...
It is, and if you scroll back, we've changed as a society like this. So if you would scroll back to the beginning of the last century, most of us died at home, and actually most of us died a lot younger than we did as well. And so dying was much more part of the everyday life. But the NHS has done wonderful things, and medical technology has done wonderful things. It keeps us going for longer. But what that's meant is that death has become more remote. It's happened. It doesn't something that happens in the home so much anymore. It happens in hospitals, out of sight. And actually, if we're going to support each other properly, we need to see dying, death, and bereavement not as medical problems that are purely for doctors to help us with, but something that we can all help and support each other through, and that's really important.
Well, what's the best way, would you say, that friends and family can be supportive in a time like this?
I think the main thing to do, actually, is to start talking about it, to start to have those important conversations. So often you hear really heartbreaking things, like people saying, when my wife died or when my partner died, people crossed our side of the road to avoid me because they didn't know what to say. And that really makes people feel abandoned at a time when they really need people around them the most. And actually, just say something, even if I'm really sorry. is actually much better. Get over the fear about being a bit clumsy and not knowing about saying the right thing. Actually, the wrong thing to do is to say nothing. The right thing to do is to say something, even if it is a bit clumsy, even if you acknowledge it and say, I don't really know what to say, I'm just really sorry and I'm here for you. That's enough, and that gets it going.
Okay. And tell us more about Dying Matters and how you help people and what you do.
Well, we've got a great awareness week, which is starting next week, so on May the 9th. And there are going to be events all over the country about that, with people coming together just to talk about the importance of death, dying and bereavement. And how we can help each other in that. We've got lots of information as well about it, about how to have those difficult conversations. So there are leaflets on our website you can have a look at about, for example, how to talk to children about dying, or what to say to somebody who's recently been bereaved. We've got some films there as well that you can look at as well. And we do all of those things. But the other thing that we really try to do is to really help people not just have the conversations, but make sure that once you've started that you do something about it. So still most of us haven't made a will, for example. Maybe most of us haven't really planned our funeral. Very few of us have really thought about what sort of care and support we would want.
And that will be for across the board at any age, because no one knows when they'll die. So it's not just maybe for the older.
Absolutely.
Generation.
So it's a bit about that. People may die in an accident, but certainly as you get older, it's starting to think about what lies ahead and whether you want to be looked after at home and those sorts of things, and just making that sort of planning the part of ordinary everyday life planning. So we plan ahead for weddings. We plan ahead for big life events. We know that we're going to die. We know that people closest to us are as well. And just making sure that we can have that sort of conversation and discussion and talk about what we want and make sure that we haven't left a mess behind us for our family to sort out is so important.
And also, do you think other countries see death differently and it's more sort of talked about, would you say, rather than compared to the UK?
I think in the West, generally, there is quite a taboo about it. Many people will have seen in the last James Bond film, Spectre, they had a huge celebration in Mexico at the beginning of the Day of the Dead celebrations, and that's where every year they come together and actually just celebrate people who have died. And you've got people dressed as skeletons and sort of cakes and biscuits made up of skeletons. So they're very much more open about it there, but it's not a uniquely British thing to have this taboo.
It's quite funny because the British are quite reserved about many things, aren't they? Yeah. Okay, Simon, any advice that you would give to someone that maybe is having a bit of difficulty within the family, people can't agree on what to do? Maybe those conversations haven't been had beforehand, and now there's all this kind of pressure and stuff. Any advice that you could give?
Well, have a look at our website where the leaflets are, the Dying Matters website, and that might give you some tips. But also actually try and get some help about this. So your local hospice might be able to help you. So that's not just a place where you can go, which is for people who are really on the verge of death. They are there as community-based charities to try and help people have those conversations. Your GP might be able to help as well.
So there's lots of avenues that person
Absolutely,
can go down. Okay, Simon, thank you so much, and all the best with Dying Matters Awareness Week.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. All right, guys, so don't go away, because we now have the first part of an amazing lady called Kate Granger, and take a look at how she deals with her diagnosis of terminal cancer.
Hello, my name's Kate, and I live with my husband Chris in Wakefield. I'm a 32-year-old elderly medicine registrar working in Yorkshire in the UK. There's nothing unusual about that really, but I'm also a cancer patient, a terminally ill one with a very rare and aggressive form of sarcoma. On my blog I muse about current issues, especially relating to end-of-life care, communication and patient-centeredness. I also write about my experiences as I approach the end of my life.
Kate and I met in a nightclub in Huddersfield, of all places. We've been together ever since. Kate was first diagnosed approximately 2.5 years ago now.
At the stage of our lives that we were at, it really was quite a bombshell. We'd both got successful careers, we were just about starting to plan a family. You just don't expect it in your late 20s, early 30s that you're going to have to deal with something like this. As a doctor, I was a lot more familiar with death. Breaking bad news is something that happens all the time in a hospital, and we do it and we go home and we carry on living our lives as doctors. Once I'd had that news myself, I think I'd started to realise the impact on that person, and that when you go home as a doctor, you leave that person with that news and they have to live it. All I wanted when I was first diagnosed was to be treated normally, just to be treated as Kate.
You know, we are just a normal couple at the end of the day, and whatever normal is.
I like to call it a gremlin that sits on our shoulders and gives us a little poke now and again. In the beginning, I really quite enjoyed making people feel uncomfortable about my attitude towards death and dying and talking about it openly. You can't tell people how to feel about a topic. You can't enforce a particular view, but you can suggest another way of thinking about things. One way I'm trying is by using social media. I love Twitter. I think it's a massive community of support out there that you can access day and night. I think Chris thinks I'm a little bit addicted. Having cancer, there's loads of positives. It's brilliant. No, there are. No, I can talk about positives. I just need to look like I'm not dying.
It's an amazing lady, and we'll be watching the second part of her story after the break. And also coming up, we revisit an interview with Shelley Gilbert from an organisation called Grief Encounter that helps children cope with loss. Hi, I'm Chrissy B, and my show is all about improving your mental health and being happy. Join me every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 10 p.m. on my channel Sky 203. Visit chrissybshow.tv for more information and subscribe to our YouTube channel Chrissy B Show. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chrissy B Show and on our Facebook page, The Chrissy B Show. Welcome back to our programme today in support of Dying Matters Awareness Week, and we are speaking about a subject that many people find difficult to even think about, but it does need to be addressed because it's going to happen to all of us one day. And we're also talking about coping with bereavement. And let's take a look at this interview with Shelley Gilbert from an organisation called Grief Encounter that helps children cope with loss. So let's introduce Shelley now, who is the founder of this great charity. Hi Shelley, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for putting the really difficult subject of death on the map.
I know, I'm just hoping we still have viewers, but I'm sure we do. So it's going to be really helpful for people. So tell us about your charity and how it came about.
Sure. Yeah, it's called Grief Encounter, and we set up in order to help bereaved kids. What happened was that my mum and dad died when I was very young. And I grew up in this conspiracy of silence. I was adopted by my aunt and uncle and actually had quite a happy childhood. But what people didn't acknowledge was the dark side, the lonely tears at night. We just weren't allowed to speak about the person or the people that had died. There were photos around and they were in conversation, but when I say speak, not really speak about them.
Was that like a coping thing for the family?
Yeah, because I think you can understand as an adult now, I understand as an adult, it's to protect me from the pain. They didn't want to upset me. They didn't want to make me cry, but they wouldn't have made me cry because I was crying anyway. It was just a really lonely place to be.
So it does affect, would you say it affects children as much as it does adults, maybe just in a different way?
Yeah, and we don't really give children the opportunity. For my own personal experience was people might say, I'd say, oh, my mum is dead, because she's not picking me up at school. But they'd never take the conversation any further because I was scared. People don't like talking about unpleasant things, and death's probably the most difficult conversation that we'll ever have to have.
Okay, so how would you advise then on how to tell a child, or how to help a child through a bereavement then? What's the best way?
Okay. I wanted to make things different for today's bereaved children, put those conversations on the map. So what I did was write a book. It's called Grief Encounter. And I thought a few aunties and uncles and friends would buy it, and that would be the end of it, because it's such a difficult subject.
Yeah.
But what actually happened was the most amazing public reaction. I was really ill prepared. There was a couple of us around that were answering phones.
That's a good problem.
Yeah,
Positive. Yeah.
It was. Yeah.
Expecting. So what was it like? What was happening?
It was just amazing and quite overwhelming. And also at the time, we got the attention of someone very special, who's now one of our patrons, called Kevin Wells, whose daughter Holly was murdered in Soham.
Okay.
And Kevin, so when he read the book, he wept tears of joy and relief, because there's very powerful messages. And the messages in the book go something like, let's give kids and adults permission to grieve. Grieving isn't over in a day or a week or a month, but yet in our society we behave as if it is. The lady from the email before, thinks, a week, time's a healer, and how's she going to get through it, and how can she cope? Well, we'd say small steps. Small steps, just give yourself space and time. And we say the same to the children. The third message, and another strong message in the book, is there's this huge pressure on us to move on. But why should you ever move on from the death of a parent, especially when we're dealing with children, young people? Why should you ever accept? So we use the word adjustment. So giving people permission to grieve, that includes children. Children can't make any opportunities. Don't expect people to be over it in a day or a week or a month. Give them time and space, and to use the word adjustment, not acceptance.
Okay, and this thing about moving on though, obviously we don't want people to be stuck in this, in a depressive state for years and years. So in that, I think when people maybe sometimes say, you need to move on with your life, they mean it in a kind way, as in don't be stuck where you are, get on with your life as well. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that they're forgetting about the person, because maybe, I think sometimes people are afraid to move on because they think, oh, I feel guilty for continuing to live when someone that I love so much isn't here anymore.
Absolutely.
So let me just stay where I am and be depressed and be down, because I can't, I feel bad to move on.
Yeah, or you need to feel that pain. Sometimes I joke with my widowed mums, I'd say, if I could take all your pain away today, would you give it to me? And they go, oh, no. Because you want, pain's the price you pay for having loved someone. Some of the old cliches are absolutely spot on. But yeah, stuckness is the key word, and as psychotherapists, that's what we'd look for. We don't want anyone to be stuck, Miss Havisham, in their grief, or Queen Victoria. But to see grief, everyone does grief differently. And to see it as a bigger picture. One little child, there's a quote in the book, said to me once that he saw Mummy crying at the sink, and he said, I saw Mummy crying at the sink and I wasn't bothered, it was fine, because I knew she was crying about Daddy, and that's okay. It was okay, because she was crying about Daddy, and she should have been crying about Daddy.
Shelley, tell us about this humour element, because I did see it briefly on your website, and that intrigued me, because a subject like death, people, you can't laugh about things like that. That's really disrespectful, but it's an interesting thing to talk about, and I think it is very helpful for people as well. Can you tell us more about the humour aspect?
Definitely, I certainly think so, and we're just building that part of our website at the moment. We work.
Oh, we're going to get a sneak preview then.
Yeah, yeah, because we work quite closely with comedians, and I mean, I grew up using humour quite a lot because it makes the person you're talking to feel better as well. Like, there's the Oscar Wilde quote of losing one parent's very sad, but losing two's careless.
That's what I saw. It was I shouldn't laugh at that, but then at the same time, I was like, why not? Come on, it's like it's a natural part of life, isn't it?
It is a natural part of life, and you don't want to laugh at someone.
Yeah.
What we want to do, and that's what we do a lot of in our workshops, you know, is have fun and laugh together.
Yeah.
You know, especially say the horrific ends of some people. You know, little kids are witnessing mums with cancer, with drips and blood and all sorts of horrific images. But if at some point we can give them a name, make them laugh, help them along their way, that's definitely part of healing and feeling better.
So we watched the first part of Kate's story before the break, and now it's time to watch part 2.
I think humour's a great tool to facilitate openness, and I think I've always had a dark sense of humour. I think it goes with being a doctor. Probably my favourite joke around me dying belongs to my mum, and she bought me a very expensive handbag. And when I said, Mum, you really shouldn't have spent so much money on me, she said, well, it doesn't really matter, does it? Because you don't need your inheritance, do you? Chris pulled a good one a few months ago, and he said, I asked him if I could have another cake and whether it'd be too fat, and he said, no, it doesn't really matter because you're dying.
Did you have another one?
Yeah. Writing is something that's part of my life now. It never was before. I never intended to share my illness. In fact, when I was first diagnosed, I was really private about it. I didn't even tell everyone on Facebook until maybe about 8 or 9 weeks into what was happening. Then I started keeping a diary about what was happening and reflections on my care and the relationships that I was building with my doctors and the people looking after me. Having a plan that sets out where you'd like to be, what you'd like to happen, it's reassuring to a family. Planning in end-of-life care is a very fluid, very dynamic process that can change every week, can change every day, could change every hour towards the end.
I know exactly how she wants everything to be. So I need to make sure that nothing's overruled by anybody based on what they think. Rightly or wrongly, people might not agree with that decision, but that's the decision that Kate wants adhering to, and I have to make sure that that's done.
A death plan is almost like a birth plan. You have to be willing and that things may go wrong along the way and you may not get your wishes. But if you don't have a plan at all, then you're definitely not going to get your wishes. The time is going to come when I am going to be on my deathbed, and Deathbed Live is going to come into play. What I'd like from that time is a time with my family and friends, kind of shut off from the outside world in a lot of ways. We decided that instead of dying here, I'm going to go to my mum and dad's to give Chris more support and a bit more emotional and physical help with me. I'd like to have enough pain relief to be not in pain, but I don't want to be sedated. And strange how it sounds that I've picked my music and my candles and the books I'd like my mum to read to me. And I hope that my vision of a fairly serene, peaceful death is achieved. But I know from past experience that that may not be the case. But at least I'll have some lovely music.
So we will get to watch the third part of Kate's story later on. Now, after the break, we'll be looking at the amazing attitude of a woman that lost her husband just after they got married. Hi, I'm Chrissy B and my show is all about improving your mental health and being happy. Join me every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 10 p.m. on my channel Sky 203. Visit chrissybshow.tv for more information and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Chrissy B Show. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chrissy B Show and on our Facebook page, The Chrissy B Show. Welcome back to our show today, all about coping with bereavement, and we are doing this in support of Dying Matters Awareness Week. So now we're going to be looking back at an amazing lady whose story really touched me, and she lost her husband very shortly after they got married. Hello, Marilyn.
Hi, Chrissy. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you. Thanks for coming on the show today. So I know you've travelled from Ireland just to be on the show. So it's wonderful to have you. So you've also got a story to tell about cancer.
I do, yes.
Can you tell us about what happened?
Well, I'd met this really wonderful guy called Vincent about 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And we had a great relationship. We were very, very much in love, and he was out cutting a hedge one day, and he came home and he said his arm was hurting, his left arm was hurting, mm-hmm. But it was very painful. So he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, oh, it was rotary cuff tendonitis. But the pain in his arm didn't get any better. That pain was there from mm-hmm. October. Then on the 8th of February, 2014, he was in excruciating pain. Now, he was a 6'3" man, he was ex-military, so he wasn't a baby or anything like that, but to see a grown man crying in pain was heartbreaking, so I called an ambulance. He was taken into the hospital. They x-rayed his arm, and we were dealt the news that he had 4 upper arm fractures here. Really? That was caused by bone cancer. Wow. So he was then kept in hospital. They wanted to do further scans and tests on him. Mm-hmm. And it was then found out that the cancer that he had in his bones was a secondary cancer. The primary cancer was in his kidney. Mm. So obviously that was a huge shock, because he didn't drink and he didn't smoke. He was, as I say, ex-military. He was a very strong, fit man. So his diagnosis did not fit.
Didn't make sense, does it? And
no,
it
absolutely.
does happen like that, yeah. Sometimes. And were you already married at this time, or were you?
No, we weren't. We'd spoken about it, but we hadn't made any firm plans. Mm-hmm. It was after he was diagnosed that we decided that we'd get married. But Vincent didn't get any chemotherapy or radiotherapy. He was on a new target therapy drug, mm-hmm. and this drug was to try and trick the cancer. There was no prognosis could be given as definite as to how long he would have. We knew it was terminal, but we were sort of given a guideline of maybe 5 years. So we knew when we were getting married that we would never get old together.
Okay.
So we planned our wedding. We got married on the 13th of August 2014. We had a very, very beautiful day. The weather was great. Vincent's health wasn't 100%. He had a little bit of a cough, but he was in high spirits, and nothing, there was no signals to say that anything was untoward or anything was wrong. We had a wonderful day, and we didn't organise to go on a honeymoon there straight away. We thought that we would give ourselves a few days and then decide where we were going to go. So 2 days after the wedding, he was back in hospital with this horrendous cough. And it was thought that he had burnout from the wedding because he'd given it socks, you know, he'd really put a lot of energy into it.
Can you imagine?
And a lot of doctors were running around and nobody was saying anything. And I just, it wasn't denial, it was probably an innocence really, because I just thought, oh, they're aware that we've just got married. Because it was, we had a standing joke is, oh, you know, I'd say to Vincent, oh, you were a cheapskate, you know, anything to get out of taking me on honeymoon. I'm stuck in a hospital ward.
So important to keep the humour, isn't it? Like,
and that's what we did, to try to keep the humour. So it was like the room that Vincent was in, we called it the honeymoon suite. This was our honeymoon suite. So doctors were not saying anything, and there was a lot of to and froing. And we were sitting on the bed doing a list of things we were going to do with money we'd received as wedding gifts. Towels, a new iron, a honeymoon, normal things. And a visitor came to see Vincent, and while that visitor was there, the doctors called me into the side room, still not thinking anything was too untoward. I went in, and this beautiful doctor sat down with me, and she said, Marilyn, she says, it breaks my heart to see you writing these letters, you know, writing this list. She says, I think you should know, she says, Vincent is very sick. And I've gone, I know he is. I know he's very sick. It's a chest infection, burnout from the wedding. No, he's extremely sick. And we need you to call his family. We don't think he's going to make the weekend.
Oh, goodness.
So I started laughing, which sounds horrid, but it wasn't laugh as in
funny.
It was like, no, like we've only just been married, like just 10 days before. No, this is not happening. He's just got a chest infection. You've got it wrong. And the doctor just shook her head and she said, no. She said, we haven't got it wrong, Marilyn. I'm so, so sorry. We just don't think he's going to survive this weekend. If his heart goes, he won't be resuscitated.
Wow. How long after that news did he actually pass?
He passed on the Sunday. He did last the weekend.
Okay.
And he decided that he wanted to come home. I had to give him the news. I asked the doctors, said, do you want me to tell? I said, do I tell him or do you tell him? And they said it would be better coming from you because you're his wife. So I had to tell him that he was dying. And he made the decision then that he wanted to come home. So we took him home, and he died on the 8th of September. So he lasted a week at home, and he died in my arms.
Oh, gosh.
At 9:20 on the 8th of September.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're so strong to come and talk about it here today. I think you're amazing to do that. I think it takes a tremendous amount of strength to come and talk about something so difficult. Sorry.
Well, you know, I did go through a lot. I went through a lot of grieving. I did things like when he died. After the funeral, that was the hardest bit because it was hard at the funeral because people were coming up to me and in one breath they were saying congratulations on your wedding and sorry for your loss, all in the same sentence. So for me, that time was extremely surreal. I was looking around at the graveside and thinking, you were at the wedding 3 weeks ago, and you were at the wedding. And it just, none of it made any sense to me at all. And I felt like I was on the outside looking in. But it was after the funeral then that was quite difficult for me. I did things like put on his jumper, listen to his music, wear his aftershave.
I'm smiling because I did something like that at that time. put his pyjamas on.
Wear his aftershave, things like
Yeah.
that. And, you know, I did do my crying, and I did do my
of
anger,
course,
and
you
I
have to
did
cry,
do the
yeah.
wailing, and I did do all that. And then something just, one day, it didn't hurt as much. That griping pain that I thought would never leave me, well, it didn't hurt as much.
And this is a thing, because sometimes it feels like you're going to be in that state forever.
Absolutely.
And then, like, but with time, they do say time is a healer, and you know it does. After a while, that pain does numb, and then it eventually goes. But man, talking about time, we've almost run out of time. I can't believe it. I want to talk to you more. But quickly, can you tell us about the book that you've written? Because you've done something amazing.
I worked with 15 people who had been touched by cancer, and taught them that the power of the pen for inner healing. And it's a true insight into cancer. And the book is called We Turn Tears into Laughter.
Yeah, brilliant. And you are looking forward. That hasn't sort of made you sort of give up on life, that experience, because you're
Absolutely
moving
not.
forward, you're getting on with your life.
Yeah, I am absolutely getting on my life, because my feeling is that I'm a very, very blessed person to have had such a beautiful time with such a wonderful man. And I'm a very blessed person that I got to say goodbye to him.
Yeah.
There was nothing left to say, we'd said it all. So for that, I am so grateful that I was blessed and privileged to have that time.
Thank you so much, Marilyn, for sharing your story. You're amazing, and all the best for the future. Thank you. Well, I really did love that attitude that she had of being appreciative of the time they actually had together, and not being, you know, he's not remaining angry. And as she said, there was nothing left for either of them to say. So now we're going to be watching part 3 of Kate's amazing story.
I think it was challenging for everyone to come across somebody young who was dying, who could talk about it without usual societal constraints. I think we don't talk about it in Britain because of our stiff upper lip. I think within other cultures, death is seen as a much more positive thing to be celebrated almost. And I think if our culture were to adopt a similar strategy, then a lot of the issues we'd have in healthcare where problems arise in end-of-life care wouldn't arise. I think you just have to get on and do it. Charities like Dying Matter are very important in raising the profile of these conversations and opening up channels of communication.
She's already made funeral plans. She's put them in a box, so I know where they are, so that at that time we can just get those out and go through the motions.
We've had conversations about how Chris is going to cope once I've died, and what he might do with his career and things like that. And those conversations are difficult to have, and we both get upset at times, but I think by being open about it, we're both more comfortable in our own skins, living the life that we're living. Having a terminal cancer diagnosis has definitely changed my perspective on life. I appreciate small things in life a lot more than I ever did before. So seeing the cherry blossom because I might not see it again, just spending time with my friends and family, watching my nephew grow up, those things are really important.
There's been some really, really low points in that journey, both from a illness perspective and from a family perspective. But then there's also been some extreme high points which I don't feel many people will experience in their whole lifetimes.
My particular journeys led me down paths to Buckingham Palace, to all sorts of awards and accolades that I never would have achieved without having cancer.
And we'll be watching part 4 of Kate's story after the break. And also after the break, I'll be going through the top regrets of the dying, and also talking about my own phobia that I used to have of death. I'm Chrissy B, and my show is all about improving your mental health and being happy. Join me every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 10 p.m. on my channel Sky 203. Visit chrissybshow.tv for more information and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Chrissy B Show. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chrissy B Show and on our Facebook page, The Chrissy B Show. Welcome back to today's program, which is in support of Dying Matters Awareness Week. So we have been speaking about a subject that is quite taboo in this country and actually in Western countries in general, but we do feel it's important to talk about it because first of all, for people to prepare themselves, but also to make things easier for their family as well. So if you've missed the beginning part of this program, you can head over to our YouTube channel in a few days' time and you can catch it there. And the YouTube channel is Chrissy B Show. So a subject like this was something that I never ever wanted to even think about. And actually, I became very aware of my own mortality when I was a teenager. And, I lived in a house where my dad was very strict and I wasn't really allowed to do what I wanted and go out with my friends and do all the normal stuff that teenagers do. And one day I was just laying in bed, just thinking about my life and being really upset because, I wasn't doing I couldn't go to parties and stuff like that. And then I started to think about my future and I thought, well, soon I'm going to get married and then, then I'm going to get old and that's it. That's all my life's going to be. And then I thought more ahead and I thought, and one day I'm going to die. And that was that point that I actually realized that one day I wouldn't be here anymore. And that actually sent me into such a panic attack. That was the first panic attack that I had. And it was really, really bad. And from then on, that's when all the problems started with depression and other mental health issues. It just brought on more and more things. And it wasn't the actual death process that I was afraid of. I was afraid of not existing anymore. I just thought there would just be this nothingness and that would be it, and I wouldn't feel anymore and I wouldn't be able to love anymore. I wouldn't see my family anymore, and that's what actually scared me. But then over the years, and I started to develop a faith in God, and now I know, for example, that, and because of the experiences that I've had in my own life through faith, I know that this isn't it, that this earth, what we live here, once it's over, that's it, and there's nothing more. I know that there's life after death, and I know that it's going to go on forever. So that was that problem solved. So for me, it's not a subject that I'm afraid of anymore or afraid to talk about, and it's actually something that for me is something positive. And I think that's the way when we sort of think about it, that many people should think about death. It's an opportunity, and also we have to make the most of how we live our lives here. And actually that brings me on to my next subject, which is the top regrets of the dying. Now, this was a study done a few years ago where they asked terminally ill patients if they had any regrets. And these were the top things that they talked about. And this is just to highlight this to everyone so that you can make the most, as I said, of your time here on earth. So the first point is, the first regret that they have is that I never pursued my dreams and aspirations. So obviously, this is something that we talk about so much on this program, that if you have a dream to do something, if you have something that you've always wanted to do, try and pursue that dream. I know for some it's unreal. You might think it's unrealistic because of finances or because of other commitments, but do something towards that dream, even if it's just some steps towards it, and you never know what might happen. So that was one of their regrets. The second regret was, I worked too much and never made time for my family. So this is another thing, people are so worried about the bills and the finances and everything. And yes, it's a worry, it's a concern, and financially things have to be going well, and you have to be able to pay your bills and stuff like that. But not to ignore your family, not to never spend time with them, because a lot of children grow up so angry because they didn't see their parents very much. So even though they had the material things and they had everything that they needed to live, the fact that they didn't have that time with their parents caused so many major issues later on in life. So that is one of the regrets, and this is something for all of us to think about. Are we spending enough time with our family members, our loved ones? The third point is, I should have made more time for my friends. So again, that's another thing about, we get so caught up in so many things that sometimes friends just kind of, you know, when you've got time, you'll meet a friend, but friendships are so, so important. The fourth point that they said that they regretted was, I should have said I love you a lot more. So this one's quite sad because sometimes we lose people, and it's such a guilty feeling when, you know, you could have done more, you could have treated that person better, you could have said I love you, and you didn't do that. So for those of us that are still here, that our family members are still around, friends are still around, make sure you let that person know how much you love them, and make sure you treat them the best that you can treat them as well. The fifth regret of the dying was, I should have spoken my mind. So many people hold things back. They don't really express what they're feeling, and because of that, they kind of live with a lot of, I suppose, ill feelings inside of them, and they're not happy because they're not really being themselves. They're not expressing themselves like they should do, and that actually does make a person quite depressed sometimes. So it's important for us to speak our minds, not in a rude way, but we should always be honest. And if there's something we don't like or we don't agree with, what's the harm in expressing ourselves? And actually, I think a person gains respect when they're honest. The sixth regret is that I should have resolved my problems. So again, many people, I think, find when they're faced with an issue, with a problem, it's easier to run away. For everyone, it's much easier to just avoid any problems that we're going through. But that problem won't go away by doing that, and it's best to face things head on. And we always talk about this on this program, because we do encourage people to face your issues, face your problems. Don't sweep them under the carpet, because you can do it. There's so much support out there nowadays. There's lots of charities, there's lots of people that can help you, and it's not something that you have to live with. You can actually solve it. And actually, when we go through problems and we solve those issues, we become much stronger, and it gives us confidence as well. The seventh regret was, I wish I had children. So maybe for those that, maybe were too busy to have children, and it wasn't maybe a priority, and then it was too late. So that's another regret. I suppose in my case, I chose not to have children, but not because of, work or anything like that. It's just a personal decision that I made with my husband. But for others, sometimes they just leave it. They always think, okay, I want children, but then I want kids, but I have to work first. I have to save some money first. I have to do this. I have to do that. And then by the time if they wait for the perfect time, there's probably never going to be one. And the eighth regret is, I should have saved more money for retirement. So people that just, with this one, I'm a bit like in between, because I don't think people should save all the time and never spend their money. I think there should be balance there, because I think you should save some money for a rainy day, but also you make money to also enjoy your life. What's the point of just saving and then you die and leave it all behind? So for me, that's sort of 50-50. The next point is, the next regret was not having the courage to live truthfully. So that's kind of similar to the one that we said before. So when you're maybe pretending to be someone else, you're not true to yourself, you're trying to fit into what society thinks is okay and what society accepts. So it's important that we are who we are. And obviously, I'm not saying that we shouldn't improve ourselves or work on ourselves. If someone says, look, this, you've got this kind of bad trait, of course, we should always be developing, but our core values shouldn't change according to, what's around us. And the 10th thing that the dying said was, happiness is a choice. I wish I knew that earlier. So maybe those kind of people that would always kind of look at the negative side of life, not appreciate the things that they have, not appreciate their family, not appreciate their friends, or the things that they have, always grumpy, always seeing things in a negative way. But again, this is something that we can all turn around. So I hope those tips those points have actually inspired you to live your life to the full, because you're still here, you have an opportunity. So let's learn from these 10 points and put things into practice. All right, so now it's time to see the final part of the amazing Kate's story.
In order to stimulate a change in society, I think you almost have to shock. I think that's the society that we live in. I think that's how people stop and think. And I guess that's the power of some of the work I've been doing. Hello, My Name was born out of a hospital experience last year. It's about building a connection, about starting a relationship.
One of the ideas that we came up with, which I think I actually came up with, but Kate will take more of the glory for this, was
Hashtag Hello, My Name is. We presented it at the NHS Care and Innovation Expo, and I think until that point Chris hadn't really realised how much of an impact it had had on so many people, until he realised what a celebrity his wife had become.
It's spread like wildfire. It's gone national, international.
I'm clearly having an impact on other people's lives, but yeah, I just see myself as a normal girl going about a daily business.
Kate's work will continue through various people, me included, well into the future, and hashtag Hello My Name is will be a big part of that, but there's more than just that. It's her inspiration and courage to others. Whatever the future may bring for both of us, we've got to be blessed that we've had that time together, be it 10 years, be it 50 years. We've had that time, and not everybody in life is as fortunate as what we have been to have that time.
I'd like my main legacy to be a better NHS that considers patients as people, not just diseases or conditions. And I hope I've managed to achieve that a little bit by making people stop and think about how they communicate with people.
So Kate is so brave to be sharing her story with the world, and you know, she's making a huge impact and she's really making her life count. So well done to Kate. Well, we have reached the end of today's program, but if you have a story that you would like to share, maybe there's something that you've been through and you can inspire our viewers, or maybe there's a problem that you're still going through and you would like to see a topic covered here on this show, you can get in touch with us via the website chrissybshow.tv. You can also tweet us at Chrissy B Show or leave a message on our Facebook page, The Chrissy B Show. Until next time, bye-bye for now. So we watched the first part of Kate's story before the... Oh my God, sorry, my voice. Because many people don't like to speak about it, but it's something that needs to be addressed, my voice. Welcome back to today's program, which is all about dying. Oh God, that sounds really bad. And then I lose all my viewers. So that was really nice. And now we're going to be watching the next part, right? So now we're going to be looking back at the story of an amazing lady who has a really, no.